All right, come down here to the river. Place I'm really starting to come to more and more often out here. I'm starting to enjoy this place a little bit. Little boat ramp here. And the dam is over there. You can probably hear traffic going by on the bridge, but as of yet, I've not put a boat overboard to go down the river and see what's down there. And I'm almost certain that if I did put a little boat in here, I could go all the way down to right in front of the house, which I'm going to find out come this spring. But the reason I'm here is you guys know, if you follow anything I do on Facebook or any other type of social media, what have you, that I'm real big into cryptids. You know, not only cryptids as far as undiscovered little insects and birds and things that are being found by the hundreds every single year. Unknown species of stuff that, you know, they call them cryptids or cryptozoology, and it's the discovery of these animals and what have you. Well, I'm not so much into that as I am things like these mysterious monsters, you know, Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and what have you. And I don't imagine there's any sea monsters in this little river, except maybe some big old carp and a few catfish. But one of my favorites, because I kind of have a little bit of contact, I guess, a little bit of personal history, I guess. One of my favorites is this Dogman. Now, I don't believe in werewolves. I don't believe that a human person can transform into something else. Not just because I don't believe it doesn't mean it's true. You know, there may be somebody out there, some werewolf watching this, that wants to come prove me wrong. Well, if you are, then leave me alone. But I do believe in the Dogman. I do believe there were, at least at one time, a race of dog-headed people. Marco Polo claims to have seen them. Several other historical figures have claimed to have seen them and met them. I think Saint Christopher was allegedly a dog man. I don't know. Big, huge joker. Something I might have to look up again because I'm not certain of. But anyway, down where I'm from, down in Pamlico County, Beaufort County, Craven County, back, I guess, in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, there were a rash of sightings and encounters of a creature down in, especially down in the Beaufort County, Pamlico County area, some in the Craven County, of a Bigfoot-ish type of creature that had, according to my dad, the head and mane of like a German Shepherd or a collie dog. A bunch of people claim to have seen this thing, seen it crossing out in fields, seen it in the woods, even coming up in their backyards and such. It was even written up in the newspaper, Craven County Sun Journal, in Auburn there. I've got relatives that say they have actually seen something that looked like a werewolf, something that, you know, we now call Dogman. I'm doing this video just to give a story here, that something that I had happened to me as a teenage boy. I hunted that area literally from the time I was able to walk. I was my dad's only son, firstborn child, first boy born amongst a bunch of girls. Where's that cop going? You leave me alone, dude. Bunch of girls. I was the first boy. my dad's first kid. So Dad wanted to take me everywhere. Now, as soon as I was able to stand on my own and walk by myself, Dad would bundle me up, throw me in the old bench seat of the old truck. No car seats, no bucket seats, no nothing, just old Ford, and he'd throw, no, at that time I think it was an International. But he just threw me in that old bench seat, and still had a diaper bag. I was still in diapers, I was so little. And Daddy would take me hunting. And so I literally hunted this area my entire life. From the time I was able to walk, I was out there, and I knew every ditch, every creek, every slough. I knew every fire lane. I knew every dirt road. There were no paved roads back then. And and my dad being my dad, we hunted with dogs. Dogs would run to deer, and you'd get out ahead of where the dogs are going, so you can cut the deer off and shoot it. So I was always in the woods. And I was always off by myself. I'd get out of the truck and I'd hit the woods, and my dad may not see me for the next few hours or whatever, I was always gone. But there was one day in particular, I remember this one really well, and I've heard so many other accounts of people saying things very similar to this. At this time, I knew something was strange, something was weird. There's something just ain't clicking here, but there was no idea of a dogman or a cryptid. It's just something strange going on. I was way back in the woods. I was about a mile and a half back in the woods off of the old dirt road. I was back in there. Dogs had run, and I was trying to cut off the deer, and hell, I think I was maybe 14 or so, maybe around that age. And I carried an old Remington, a 12 gauge pump. My dad bought it for me on my 12th birthday, and he bought it from Western Auto, if that tells you a little bit about how old this story is. But that was my thing. 2 3/4 inch double aught buck. I'd put down anything I wanted to hunt, and I trusted in that weapon. I carried it everywhere. Well, dogs got on off a ways where I just wasn't willing to try to go any further. So I just hung out where I was at, and where I was at, I was sitting there in an old blowdown. Old tree had blown over into another tree, and I'm just propped up on it, just waiting. Well, the sounds of the woods, the cicadas, the crickets, the birds, the squirrels, everything that goes on in the woods, you're used to it, you know it. It's background noise that you don't even take into consideration. It's just there. Well, it got quiet. And I don't mean quiet as in like right now where we hear, well, aside from the cars going over the bridge, where you hear, the water, you hear a few birds, you hear the sounds of nature out here. I don't mean quiet like that. I mean quiet as in nothing. Nothing. Well, it kind of dawns on me. I don't know how long it had been that quiet, but it finally kind of dawned on me. It's like, what's going on, man? What's happening? I don't hear birds. There ain't no squirrels going around. There's nothing. There's no insects. There's nothing. And I stayed where I was at on that old blowed down tree, and I just waited for a while longer. Man, I just got the worst, creepiest, god-awful feelings crawling all up and down me. And I knew something was watching me. Who the hell is out here watching me? There's somebody, I'm something, Now, being out like I was, growing up like I did, you learn to smell things. You can smell deer, you can smell bear, you can smell, scents and odors you get so used to that, you catch a whiff of something and you know. I ain't smell nothing. I didn't hear nothing. I couldn't see a God blessed thing. I'm out in the woods. Now we're talking, I don't know, it's late November, maybe early December. So it's about like it is up here on this ridge. You could see. There's not a whole lot of foliage. There's not a whole lot of greenery. It's just similar to this type of thing. Now, down where I'm from, the woods are a little bit different than this, you know. But trees are trees and bushes are bushes, no matter where you go, right? So I'm looking around, you know, looking all up in, you know, I don't see nothing in the trees. There's nothing. There's not a thing moving. And if you spend any time in the woods hunting, your eye catches movement probably before it catches anything else. I've shot a lot of deer just because, you know, its ears would twitch, or its tail would flicker, or it's turn its head and whatever. And that's the only way I ever saw it. If it stood still, I'd have never seen it. So I'm looking and I'm looking. I see no movement. I see no color changes. There's nothing standing out. There's something here, though. You can feel it, man. It's just up and down your backbone, all the back of your neck. It's like, oh my God, something's watching me. And it got to a point where, and I wasn't one to get scared in the woods. Like I told you, I was raised in the woods. I spent, you know, up until that time, you know, hell, probably 12, 13 years, you know, on my own in the woods with whatever gun I was carrying. So I wasn't afraid. But man, something just, holy crap, you know, I got to get out of here. I got to go. Something's just, I got to go. So I started heading on back out to the dirt road that ended, you know, because dirt road went up in there quite a ways and it ended, and then I went on off in the woods maybe another half mile, 3/4 mile. So I was back there about 1.5 miles or so away from the main gravel road. So I started heading out that old dirt road again, and I'm going and I'm watching. It's like, good God Almighty, there's something. I ain't hearing nothing, man. And I find myself getting a little bit faster and getting a little bit faster. And it's like, you know what? You know, even at that age, like I said, I was maybe 14 or so. Even at that age, I had this pride about me, this sense of, you know, manly man. I ain't running. There ain't nothing in these woods that's going to run me out of here. I'm not running. I did walk pretty fast, but I wasn't running. And I get on out and I finally get to the little dirt road that dead ends up in there, about 1 mile back up in there. I get to the end of it and I'm like, all right, man, crap, I still got to get out of here. And I'm going and I'm walking and I got this old shotgun, wearing my jacket about like I'm wearing it right now, just unzipped. You know, my sneakers, I didn't even wear boots back then. I just wore my old sneakers. And I'm starting to head down this little dirt road. And that little dirt road wasn't hardly big enough for just a truck to go down. You know, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't some big, well-kept, state-maintained road. It's a little dirt mess where just, you run it back down and come, you know, whatever. And I'm going down this thing in the woods. Well, hell, let's turn. See this little path right here? See this little boat ramp? See? That's about how wide that little dirt road was. You know, about this wide, about wide enough. You can get a truck down there, open your door, get in and out. And I'm heading on down here, and I'm walking right down the middle of it. Because it was my habit, my nature. I'm walking, I'm looking for deer tracks. I'm looking for, you know, the dog track. I'm looking for whatever's on the ground, and, you know, I'm not seeing anything different than what I saw when I came in. But what I hear over here in the brush, now by the time I got to this dirt road, it was no longer open like this. It was thick. It was pretty gnarly, you know. It was kind of, sort of, it was worse than this mess. It was thick, you know, briars and bushes, and you couldn't see into it very well. All right. Now, once you got through that old thick crap, it opened up again. And what I'm hearing walking over here alongside of me is, as I'm walking, something's walking beside me. Yeah. Again, I'm going to reference, if you've been hunting, you've been out in the woods, you know a deer, squirrel, bear, whatever you're hunting, has 4 legs. You can hear, you can make out, you know, in your mind, you understand, those are 4 feet walking. And you know it. You just instinctively know it because you've spent so many years doing it. Well, whatever's over there walking that I can't see is on two legs. And I know it's on two legs. You know, you don't just feel it, you know it, you understand it. It's walking just like I'm walking. And as I'm taking my steps, it's taking its steps. And when I stop and I look, it stopped. It wouldn't move again. So I'm getting a little creeped out. There's something over. Now, I don't know if this is a person. Maybe it's somebody, another hunter that wanted to hunt this area and he's watching, you know, whatever. Maybe it's some, I don't know. I don't know, you know. But I do know that I'm walking and it's walking. I stop and it stops. I can't see it because it's so thick and so nasty in there that you just can't see through it. Walk a little bit further, it walks a little bit further. I stop and it stops. Well, now it's got to a point where I'm not just hanging that old shotgun down here at my side walking. Now I've got it cradled and it's ready. Something comes out of these bushes, whatever it is, you know, we're gonna have a little argument. And I'm going on down and it's coming. I'd stop it and it gets a little bit closer up in that old mess, that old scrubby mess where I can't see. And then it would go a little bit further out. I still can't see. What in the devil is going on here? And I've heard a lot of accounts of people who've encountered these dogmen that say that they'll do that. They'll walk and they'll stop and they'll walk and they'll stop, you know, and they just kind of watch you. They're stalking you, you know. Now, whether or not this thing had an idea that, you know, it wanted to attack, whether it just watching, being observant, because up until this point, I'd heard tons and tons of stories about this creature, but I had never heard of anything where anyone was ever attacked. No one was ever hurt. It didn't bother anybody. It was just seen all over the place. Well, I'm out here about a mile, maybe now about 3/4 of a mile, you know, on this dirt road by myself, about 14 years old. I'm carrying a 12 gauge pump, whatever shells I had in it, and then whatever extras I had in my pocket. Other than the knife I had on my belt, that's it. So if this is a bear, this is gonna suck to be me. If it's a person, it's a person. I can deal with that. Never gave any thought in my mind that it's this creature that I had heard all these stories about. Never dawned on me that maybe this is that thing that was wrote up about in the paper. You know, that so many people had so many accounts of. Never thought of it. Come to a point where I'm getting almost up to the end of that little dirt road where it gets up to the main big dirt road. I'm getting right on up there now, and it's thick. Man, it had got thick in these woods. A lot of reeds, a lot of bamboo, a lot of brush, a lot of scrubby mess. You just couldn't see anything. And this thing is making more noise now because it's going through that really gnarly undergrowth, that really thick mess. And it's come closer to the road. And now I catch a whiff. Now, like I said, we hunted with dogs, so I was used to smelling the old wet dogs. You know, you catch them up, you put them in the dog box, you know, you get it on you, you know what, you old wet dogs. They've been out running, they've been in the woods, they've been in the water, you know, whatever. I know what that smell is. That's what I smell. So I'm thinking, all right, well, maybe some of the dogs are around here and they'll come out. Make me feel better if a few of the dogs come out, you know, they'll walk with me, I ain't by myself. I didn't think anything else. It smelled rotten. It smelled like, if you ever passed roadkill, you know, an old possum or a raccoon or something that's been hit on the road and been laid there for a day or two, and you know that old rank, nasty, rotten meat smell. That was mixed with that old wet dog smell. Again, wasn't thinking much of it. I'm out here in the friggin' woods. You know, there's a dead animal. Something has died. Something's killed something. Maybe one of these old boys has shot something that got away from them and laid over here and died somewhere. You know, that stuff happens. You know, I'm used to that. It's been, you know, a dozen years I've been up here dealing with this. Hey, man, you know, ain't no big deal. I never give any thought to a dog man or a creature of any kind, you know. Didn't have any idea what cryptozoology was or what a cryptid was or anything back in those days. The only thing I knew was, you know, there's a Bigfoot, there's a Loch Ness Monster, and there's something crawling around in the woods up here around the island. Other than that, you know, blissfully ignorant, I guess. Well, that was one encounter that I had, and that never come out and bothered me. I never saw anything, just the smell and the sound. And that god-awful, creepy feeling of I'm being watched. There's something here. And then this unreasonable, unexplainable fear began to just, oh my God, it just started to overcome with this fear. And it was taking everything I had inside of me not to give into this fear and just bolt like a rabbit. First off, like I said before, you know, I had that teenager macho, I ain't running, you know. But secondly, I knew, you learn at a young age, Daddy told me, you know, and I learned it the hard way because of a bear. That's a whole nother story too, being chased out of the woods by a bear. That was the one and only time I've ever been chased out of the woods. And, you know, if there's a predator of some kind, be a bear, a mountain lion, a cougar, or, you know, whatever kind of predator, wolves, you know, if you run, that predator instinct kicks in and they will chase you, and then you just die tired. So no, I'm not running. I'm not gonna run. I want to run. I ain't gonna run. So I'm trying to get on out of there. I finally get on up to the main little dirt road there. Now I can take a breath because I know that the boys, you know, they're a little further down. Their trucks are down here, and they're waiting for dogs, just like I was waiting for dogs. So I feel a little bit better, and as I ease on down that road, slowed my pace a little bit. I ain't got no reason to be in such a big hurry now. I wasn't being followed anymore. Now, there was nothing in the woods over there keeping time with me, keeping pace. You know, there was no more smell. There was no more feeling of I'm being watched. There was no more. That fear subsided and went away. And in case y'all didn't notice it, I almost just tripped and fell my big ass in this water here. Yeah, I mean, watch what I'm doing. But that was one account that I can give. My own, and I never give any of this any kind of major thought. You know, it's just, you know, a bear or something, or a person or something. It's just my overactive imagination, you know. Watch too many scary movies kind of stuff. And as I've got older now, and I've gotten into, you know, Bigfoot and Dogman and Mothman and this kind of stuff, and I really enjoy reading this stuff. I enjoy hearing these stories, and I find myself getting deeper and deeper into it all the time. I've actually got now the actual newspaper article. You know, I've got it saved on my phone here when this was put out, and I've reached out to some people and go, hey man, if you remember any of these old stories from back then, you know, please share them with me. And one or two people have. And it's making me think, on that day, did I have my own encounter with a dogman or with some unknown bipedal creature? You know, that's just one account I can give you. Now, there was others. Seeing some stuff in the woods, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. Smelling stuff in the woods I ain't never smelled before. Same type of thing where everything goes dead silent. and there's nothing. And you get this feeling of, I really need to get back to the truck right now. I got to go. So, there's other stuff like that. A few years ago, down around that area, a woman was attacked and killed by some unknown canid dog-ish something. They tried to blame it on wolves. They decided it wasn't wolves. They tried to blame it on strayed wild dogs, and they decided, no, it's not wild dogs. The woman was actually found alive, and there are reports that she actually told in the ambulance what got her, but you can't find those now. All that stuff's taken away. And I just noticed there's a bunch of mistletoe growing up there. I used to take shotguns, go out there and shoot mistletoe out of the tree and go sell it around Christmas time. People used to buy that stuff up like crack cocaine. But anyway, not too long ago, another person down in that area has been attacked. I'm talking not like months, but a few years ago, 2019, kind of ish times or whatever. I don't remember exactly. But there's been a couple of attacks down there in the past, I don't know, 6-7 years, whatever. Some kind of canid. Don't know what it was. They know it wasn't a dog. They know it wasn't wolves. They know it wasn't coyotes and mess like that. But they don't know. They do know it was a canid of some kind from DNA and stuff that they've been able to take from victims. And I think there's only been those two, I don't think there's been any more. Like I said, growing up, I never heard of anybody being attacked. I never heard of anybody being hurt. Just people seeing something in the woods or in a field or crossing a dirt road somewhere. So I don't know. I figured I'd share that with you people. I would like to talk with some of the old timers from down on the island, from down Pamlico and Beaufort counties and what have you, and the people who do remember, what my uncle saw or my mama saw or, I saw. There's been times, so we used to go out spotlighting. Used to go out and take the spotlight and hang out, and back then the spotlights didn't have lumens. They were candle power. And Daddy had an old spotlight handheld, about 1 million candle powers. And we'd get in the truck and we'd ride down dirt roads, and he'd show out in the fields. And my God, we'd see deer and bear, you'd see raccoons, you'd see, just all the wildlife that was coming out at night, and it was awesome. Us kids, we would stand up in the seat of the truck. Like I said, back then there was no car seats, a mess. We didn't, whatever, man. We standing in the truck, and Daddy would shine the light out in the fields and down the roads and mess. And man, you'd see just tons and tons of deer. You might see, a old mama bear and a couple of cubs. You never know. You never know what you saw. Well, there were times when even without shining the light, you'd see some old yellow looking, I don't know, kind of like the hazard lights on your car, the yellow, amber kind of. You'd see something over there in the woods and the light ain't even shown on it. Well, we never knew what that was. Just, it's another animal. Whatever, dude. Never saw red eyes glowing like demons or none of that kind of stuff. But, there was, now that I look back, there's a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff, man, that kind of like, hey, wait a minute. Was that one of them thingies? Or was that something else? Now, I don't know. I can't stand here on this riverbank and tell you that I had an encounter with Dogman. I can't stand here and tell you that I was stalked and followed out of the woods by a cryptid. I can't tell you, hey, I've had experience with this myself. I can tell you that was only one example of something that I had happen to me in the woods. And I can tell you that I have family members and family friends that have had encounters where they actually saw a 6-foot dog run across the road on 2 legs, you know, or, you know, walking out across way back in the back of a field somewhere, you know, something that looked like Bigfoot but had the head of a dog walking down the edge of the woods, and you know, things like that. So with all that being said, I figured I'd share this, and you know, it's my little story, my little experience. Maybe I'll come out here again someday. Maybe I'll go on down there by the dam down yonder. Maybe I'll find me another spot. I don't know. I like these spots. I like this little spot. And tell you some other little instances that I had, if it interests you. Well, hell, I'm gonna do them whether it interests you or not. You don't want to watch, you don't have to watch, you know, whatever. But the more I get into this, the more I learn, the more I research, you know, the more I remember some stuff. And I have to ask myself sometimes, you know, am I just putting this in my own head because somebody else said it and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that, but do I really remember? Well, this particular story I remember very well. I remember how bad it scared me. But I think I'll do some more of these. You know, if you want to hear them, then, you know, pop on and watch them. If you have any stories of your own, encounters of your own, hey man, I'd love to hear them. You know, you don't have to give names, you don't have to tell, you know, a whole lot of details, but I'd love to hear the story. Don't pull my leg, you know. Well, if you got soft hands, I'll let you pull my leg. But yeah, if you got any encounters that you want to share, I'd love to hear them. I'm getting more and more into this thing, especially the Dogman. I was real big into Bigfoot, and not as much into Bigfoot now. I do live up here very close to Uwharrie Forest, and boy, I almost bit that one too. What was it? Is these shoes, man? What the hell? It's the shoes, man. It's the shoes. They don't make me run fast either. But I live up here very close to Uwharrie, and if you Bigfoot enthusiasts would know, lots and lots of sightings, encounters up here. As a matter of fact, Finding Bigfoot actually did an episode right up here. So I may head back and do a little bit more Bigfoot looking stuff. I don't know. Down here at Raven Rock, I've heard stories of people having encounters down here of Dogman. Not as many Dogman encounters here in North Carolina as there are Bigfoot. And believe it or not, tons of Thunderbird sightings too. I may head on up to Cherokee a little bit. I got some relatives up there, and talk a little bit about the moon-eyed people, you know, the little people, you know, stuff like that. Raven mockers, you know, I don't get into all that stuff too much, but it's interesting. But anyway, I'm gonna head on out of here and get in the car and turn my heated seats on and warm my cold buns up. Man, it's cold out here, and I'm old. I got a lot of metal in my legs, hips now, so this metal gets cold and I get miserable. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening to me now for, wow, goodness, over 30 minutes. I hope you found the story interesting, you know, and like I said, if you have any stories of your own, any encounters of your own, I'd love to hear them. So, till the next time, folks, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe. Don't let the booger bear get you. And we'll see you in the next one.